All right, welcome back to GMA3, everybody. There are more than 100 firearm deaths every single day in this country. And according to the CDC, the country suffered a record 45,000 gun-related deaths in 2020. While working to combat gun violence and protect the public is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives. You probably call them the ATF. And for the first time now in 7 years, the Senate has confirmed a permanent leader of the agency. That permanent leader is sitting here with me now, ATF Director Steve Dettelbach. Sir, thank you for being here. First time in 7 years. I've had acting directors, but not a permanent director. Has that impacted the agency and its work in some way by not having a permanent person in place?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me.
Yes.
And look, there are incredible people out there all across the country, ATF folks, who have been working really hard to try and combat violent crime, gun crime, for all these years. And I think from my standpoint, as you say, the first Senate-confirmed director in 7 years, my job, and I feel a lot of obligation to do it, is to stand up and fight for those folks. They're doing a great job, and I am there to support and try and make sure that our state and local partners have what they need, because you said it right. There is a big problem out there. It's beyond what the mass shootings are a big problem, yeah. But in addition, there's that constant drumbeat of tragedy that goes on because of violent crime and gun violence.
The high-profile cases are one thing, but then we see what happens in places like Chicago, here in New York, where there's a violent weekend and so many people get shot. How do you prevent that gun violence? How do you get those guns off the streets? Because that's the violence that doesn't always make the headlines.
Yeah, my background before I did this job is for 20 years, I was a federal prosecutor, and then I was a U.S. attorney. And so I will tell you that law enforcement alone cannot do this. It has to be a wholesome approach. I always compare it to a three-legged stool. You have to have great enforcement. Okay. Right? Because people need to know there are dangerous people in this community that need to be caught and we need to be protected from. You also have to work with the entire community to do prevention work. That means giving families and kids options before they get inculcated into this violent culture that we have out there. And then the third part is re-entry. So it's the #1 predictor in many cases of whether you're going to do something violent and be a criminal is whether you have done it before. We need to do a better job of making sure people aren't recidivists. Those three things, it's a three-legged stool, because if you don't do any one right, the stool falls. Okay,
Director, how are you doing, because all that sounds really hefty. It sounds like a big project. How do you do that with such, you're the smallest division of the Justice Department, 2,500 agents, I believe. D.C. has more police officers by, I think, 1,000 than you do agents. You're supposed to be doing this all over the country. Why do you have so few?
Well, look, if you ask any police chief or executive in the country,
they want more.
Could use,
Yes.
Yeah. So, and the president, by the way, has proposed a significant increase to ATF's budget for this year. Okay. But as you said, my job, I'm in law enforcement, is to do the best with what we have now. And the way we do that is partnership. It's with working with state and local law enforcement to be a force multiplier.
And let me just get your take on one last thing here, because we see the mass shootings, and we often see that the shooter did buy a firearm legally. But for the most part, and the violence we're seeing day in, day out on streets, is the problem illegally possessed guns more so than legally bought guns? How big is that issue?
It's a huge issue. There are people that have firearms that the law clearly says, and I think almost everybody agrees, should not have firearms. So those are people who are, let's say, convicted murderers, rapists, felons, other groups of people who are laid out in law, and they are able to get firearms far too easily, and they're using them to hurt people, a lot of people, not in cases that make the national news, just like you said, TJ, but in everyday tragedies that are playing out in this country. And God bless the police and federal agents who are working together to work on this, because it is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week problem, and it can get very, very hard on them and dangerous for them. So one thing I want to say is, we owe them a lot.
Director, I know you're kind of on a listening tour, so I appreciate you stopping by right now and sharing some of your thoughts with our audience. So thanks so much, and good luck down the road, all right?
Thank you, TJ.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, stay with us, folks, here on GMA3. Soon you're going to be calling her Doctor. She's 13, folks, a star student. She's already accepted to medical school. Yes, folks, you heard me say 13-year-old has been accepted to medical school, and she is going to be right here with us. Stay here on GMA3. We'll be right back.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.